Well, good morning, everyone. We're excited to have you all here today as we continue our series called How To. We're excited to hear from our speaker, so we will begin with introductions shortly. I am Board Lachi, and I'm the project manager at Approachable. Our mission is to create a community that values meaningful relationships and acts on the desire to make a world a better place. The purpose of our video sessions is to hear from social entrepreneurs and leaders in this space to speak to our community members and as a way for us to hear ideas and solve challenges for real world social entrepreneurs around the world. We're always looking to grow and learn from each other. Today we have with us Erin Rowe, founder of Allspring. She will speak on changing jobs within a company versus getting a new job. So Erin, welcome, and I turn it over to you now.
Thanks so much. So excited to be here. My name is Erin, as mentioned, and I'm the founder and CEO of Allspring. And our mission is to connect young professionals with jobs and careers that balance purpose and paycheck. And so excited to be working with Impactionable today because when it comes to that balance of purpose and paycheck, I really identify with you all's mission as well. So I was excited to speak in the how-to session. So today's topic is, should I change jobs within my company or look for a new one? And this is a really big question that really is considering your professional, your personal, and your financial goals and aspirations when doing so. And with the Great Resignation, there's been a lot of change in how we think about our work situation. So a majority of people are really thinking about quitting their current job and moving to a new one. And young professionals are experiencing it even more, where a larger percentage of them are actually reconsidering their work situation. But there's a lot of implications to it on the employer side, but particularly on the individual side, where it can cost up to $4,700 for an individual and kind of like lost compensation to search for a new job. That's because oftentimes people are spending around 10 hours a week looking for a new role, and then it can take up to 5 months to find that new role that feels aligned with professional, financial, and personal goals. And our goal with Allspring and Impactionable's goal as well is to expedite that process and make sure we're being really thoughtful and intentional about how we think about the job search. And so with that, wanted to spend a moment and see, what does feel most right for an individual. Are you thinking about your new career, a new job, or a promotion? As well as thinking about what they've considered to do in their dream to get closer to their dream situation. We found that a lot of people are considering graduate school or enrolling in a boot camp or getting a professional certification or taking a paid online course. But sometimes just throwing money at the problem isn't the necessarily right first step. It ends up leading to that costly $4,700 of opportunity cost in looking for a new job and getting closer to that dream situation. And there's people here to talk through that. We can also discuss that. So a little about me. I started my career focusing in business. I went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, got into the business school early, and was just kind of propelled into this track. And within the business school, it was like you went to two different types of careers. You went into consulting or you went into finance. And maybe there was a really small percentage of people that wanted to go into marketing. And with that, that narrowed my scope, as well as kind of limited the awareness I had of even other jobs that might exist at the intersections of things I was excited about, but found that I really liked the idea of consulting and solving really tough problems and challenges with different organizations, and the fact that there's this sexy component of travel associated with it. And so in my senior year, when I got a job offer to work at Deloitte Consulting, I was over the moon. This was my dream job that I had been waiting for, that I had been working 4 years towards. a few years into working at Deloitte, I started realizing that that dream job wasn't actually my dream. Yes, I was excited about solving these large, complex problems, but I didn't feel like I got to see the impact or the trajectory of impact that my work had on the firm I was working for or the firms we were working with. And I also realized that I didn't love traveling 4 days a week, every other week. And I wanted to be able to build different types of relationships. And there was other cultural aspects of Deloitte that I didn't necessarily align with. And having those big existential questions was really, really hard to navigate so early on into my career. And I did what a lot of people do. I started talking to my parents. I started talking to people I worked with, who I trusted. I started talking to mentors, but overall, a lot of the guidance I got was very homogenous in demographic or perspective or both, where most people were saying, well, just go to business school or suck it up. You're just being young and you just work really hard for the first few years of your career and then you'll reap the benefits later. And I really didn't want to accept that as my personal fate, but didn't really know what else to do. So finally, I pivot into product. I work at some really cool tech companies. I focus in education a little bit. I move into learning and development. And through these different career iterations, I start reflecting on my experiences and realizing that it's really arduous and frustrating to figure out what career is right for you. And that's really where Allspring came to be. And at Allspring, we really focus on helping people love their jobs. And we do this by connecting our clients and individuals with a financial advisor, a career coach, and a therapist, depending on what they need to support them as they navigate their working world and the questions that come with it. But really, when we're thinking about the topic for today of should I start my career, should I change my job, or should I stay at my own company, we want to start thinking about it the way we think about it at Allspring, where we're bucketing it into personal, professional, and financial goals and aspirations. And so that's where I'm going to focus the conversation. So many of the reasons people want to leave jobs are lack of leadership representation, where you may feel like, I don't see myself in the leadership team, so I probably will have to leave. That's something that balances kind of your personal goals of, making sure you feel understood at your organization, as well as your professional goals of, if I don't look like the leadership team, am I even going to be able to navigate myself into a position, into that future position? There's also learning opportunities. So oftentimes you might feel like you're not learning and growing anymore. Or maybe there's promotion opportunities where you don't see an opportunity to get promoted. There's kind of a cap because maybe your manager is not quitting anytime soon, or it doesn't feel like the company is growing in a direction that's going to support you. Or there could be cultural differences. So you might not fundamentally align with the values and culture at the organization or within the team you're working with. There's a chance that you just got a new dream. So I have a friend who started their career in finance and now they want to open a brewery in the Midwest, right? So there's something around just completely doing something different. Their scope of impact, that's what I was starting to realize when I was working at my first job, where I wanted to actually see and feel the fruits of my labor and how that changed other people. Sometimes it's really about compensation and getting more money, or feeling like you're rewarded for your skill set and your background and your knowledge. And oftentimes it's also poor managers. And there can also be it could be a myriad of these things happening at once also. So as you're thinking about it, sometimes I feel like identifying which of these buckets are causing you to want to change your work situation can help figure out what to do next. So then if you're really thinking about changing your work situation, we like to think about, okay, well, how do you ideally want to be spending your Tuesday at 10 a.m.? We'll go through how to think about that in a minute. But then if you're like, okay, this is what I want to do on Tuesday at 10 a.m. If you're thinking about or leaning towards staying, we have a set of activities we recommend people taking. So setting up conversations with people at your organization that you might trust, or studying an organization org chart to understand different roles within the company and comp structures. So that helps you figure out, okay, what is actually out there. Something that I didn't do when I was at Deloitte was actually spend time understanding how large and how global the organization was, and the fact that people could really potentially pivot their entire career by just moving within the company, because I didn't understand that org chart. Also talking to business leaders about their near-term business goals and related hiring needs can be really helpful to understand, where is the company growing and how can I align myself and my goals, whether they're professional, personal, or financial, to that growth, or at least evaluate it. And the third is really intentionally starting to highlight the skill sets that align with the future roles that you're excited about. And so we see this as oftentimes we'll get really stuck in the day-to-day part of our job and not actually looking beyond to say, well, if I'm here today and I want to be there tomorrow. So for example, I wanted to be a consultant when I first started, and then I realized I wanted to do something that had higher impact, could be more technical, more hands-on. I could have thought about, okay, product management at Deloitte. What I wasn't doing then is really thinking about, well, what skills are transferable between a consultant and a product manager that I could be highlighting within the organization that I was at that time. It's also, I say, welcome to anyone. Please feel free to use the chat as I go through different aspects of evaluating if you want to stay in your current job or leave and go to a new job. And so now we've talked about thinking about, what does Tuesday at 10 a.m. look like? What to think about if you're thinking about staying at your current job, and then, or at least your current organization. And then if you're leaning towards leaving, we really recommend, okay, we'll start identifying specific aspects of the company's culture or your role that are misaligned to your values and goals and future opportunities. So that way you're not going to get in this. I know a lot of friends and Allspring clients who are leaving one role and then they start a new role at a new organization and realize that the issues in that last role are still there in the next role in that next organization. So there's no point to, jump from one job you hate to another job you hate. So really getting clear on what are the things I'm trying to stay away from in future opportunities. And then if you're comfortable, I really recommend sharing concerns you have with your current organization, with your manager or trusted leadership, but doing it tactfully, right? It's not saying, hey, I want to quit tomorrow, or I'm threatening to quit, but hey, I really want to see my impact go further. I know there's other jobs out there where I could see that immediately. I could go from working consulting to working at a nonprofit, but I'm wondering if there's places within Deloitte I should be exploring. That's a really tactful way to frame that question, where you're not threatening to leave, but you're expressing, what changes you're hoping to have in your work situation going down the road. And then beginning to build your job or career search strategy, setting up your personal goals, your financial goals, and your ideal timeline to avoid this, 5-month runway, or the aimless networking calls that might not lead anywhere because you don't know exactly what your goals are, or the outcomes are coming from those conversations. So a few things we really want to make sure people keep in mind as they're thinking about either changing their role within an organization or outside of it is definitely just get started. A lot of times we'll sit and stew on, should I go with version A? Should I go with version B? There's so many things to, figure out at a time. Get the momentum going. The faster you get your momentum going, the more you can start kind of intentionally building direction behind how you want to change your work situation. And it's better to be just inquisitive about it, and setting up a few initial informational conversations can be really helpful. Another piece is be intentional. So Sheryl Sandberg said it really well, where it's nice to have a general idea of where do you want to be in 6 months, because you can really feel that, right? You can see what immediate steps you would want to take to get to where your ideal state is in 6 months. And then where do you want to be in 18 months? that way we're not building these like super grandiose 5-year plans, but at least feeling like you can picture your life at these 2 moments and start building a roadmap to get there. And then really start sharing your thoughts. So expressing interest in your future and trading thoughts on how to get there is usually rewarded at work. Again, we shouldn't be threatening to quit because that rarely gets us to where we want to go. But just being really open about, hey, I really get excited about doing data analysis. I know I don't get an opportunity to do that often, but if there's more projects that come up, I would love to be involved in it. Doing things like that can proactively also help other people think about, potential dream states that you might not even know for yourself exist. And the last exercise we really recommend is thinking about your musts, your shoulds, your coulds, and doing a little bit of a mapping. So your musts are, what are the personal, professional, and financial non-negotiables that you have? Writing those down will help you get really clear on what you want your future opportunities to be. Your shoulds are, what are you doing because of external pressures versus intrinsic motivations? So that can be a lot of, my parents really want me to be a doctor, but I don't know if I really want to be a doctor. Let's get clear on that and making sure that because sometimes you'll come to a line where it's a lot of work to be successful in any field. You want to make sure you're doing it for yourself and not just for, the others around you. The other idea is your coulds. So what are the list of all of the different things that you could be doing today or you could be doing next? And then mapping. So we really recommend mapping, what's that full list of things you could be doing against what are your non-negotiables and what are the things that are causing external pressures. And so with that, I'd love to just open it up and see what questions others may have.
Thank you so much for that, Erin. Erin, I have a question. So I was reading, I think last week, where it was like nearly 4.3 million people quit in August 2021, and that's the highest level since December 2020. What are your thoughts on that? And like, how have you seen the job market even change from, when COVID hit and now like more people are quitting and going to their new ventures? So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time too, because it's the first time in a while that it's been a labor market versus a employer's market. So we really get the pick of the litter, or we have a higher chance to have the pick of the litter of jobs and opportunities that we want. And I think that's amazing because it's actually empowering individuals to critically think about how do they want to be spending their time? What does work mean for them? Some people, work really is a career. For some people, work really is a job. For some people, work is the way to fund all of the other things and hobbies and interests they have. And I see a lot of people quitting being there's a really amazing sign of people are really thinking about, what do they want their Tuesday at 10 a.m. to look like? However, I do think that a lot of people are also quitting in this reactionary state of, I don't like my job today. I don't like my situation today. I'm just going to quit and start over without that intentional, thoughtful plan of, well, what do we really want to be doing next? So what, the biggest fear I have with the Great Resignation and everyone quitting is that they're quitting without that sense of kind of intentional direction of what they could be doing next, and not doing kind of the mindset work, the road mapping work that we're talking about. What do they want to be doing? Where do they want to be in 6 months or 18 months? So that they don't end up in a work situation that's very similar to the one that they just exited.
Oh, yeah, because it's so surprising to see. 4.3 million.
It's a huge number.
It's huge to quit their jobs, and I don't know if COVID really did play a role in a lot of things. Everyone was working double. You really didn't have that work-life balance anymore. You could answer emails late at night. So it was just like that whole shifted from what work used to be before, when it was like 8 to 5, after 5, you really don't touch anything. Depends on the industry you're at. But it was just shocking when I saw that. I took a screenshot and I was like, wow, 4.3 million people quit. What is everyone doing?
Right. Exactly. And it's been interesting too, because with the pandemic, we really had to invite people into our homes,
Mhm.
um, and get to know, not just us, but whoever we're living with, whether it's a partner, whether it's a roommate, whether it's children, whether it's our animals, and really starting to see how they react to that kind of, crossing that, fourth wall. And then the other thing that you really start seeing is, how disproportionately, um, COVID and the pandemic have impacted women or primary caretakers who aren't able to, balance full-time childcare or full-time like elderly, like parent care and a full-time job because daycares have been going in and out. Public schools have been opening and closing. So that's also been a really interesting moment where, really hoping that organizations are thinking critically about how do we support the whole person, because that's really what employees in the job market is looking for today, is to be, we don't need our job to be our family per se, but we need our job to respect the fact that we are a full person, and have boundaries to that. Yeah, and job security is also precious during COVID, and many businesses are still partially or fully closed, or subsidized by the government. Yeah, so there's just really a lot of, I think right now it's so interesting because there's just like a lot of nuance to every industry, to every person's unique situation, and figuring out, our finance, like managing my financials, the most important thing to me today is managing my personal relationships, taking care of my family, taking care of my kids. The most important thing is, having the ideal dream job, the most important thing. And those are really big questions. And one of the things that Allspring does is like help people start thinking through and navigating those, because you realize that all three of those aspects kind of impact your decision making.
Love that. So back to Allsprings, like how did you think of Allsprings? What was your thought process? What made you want to start it? And then I have a follow-up after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So going through my own career journey, as I mentioned, I just felt like the process was really arduous. It was really hard to get good advice from people who looked like me, especially being a Black woman and understanding kind of the cultural dynamics that come with that. And we went through a series of iterations to get to where Allspring is today, but really realized that what individuals typically need is a team, right? There's that saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes a village to do anything, just like it takes a village to kind of build your career. So with Allspring, our goal is to give people like the best of the best village, and that village is able to talk to each other. And so that's what makes it really exciting, where individuals are able to have an opportunity to talk to a financial advisor if they need, talk to their career coach, talk to a therapist, and then those career team members, are able to also connect with each other as much as an individual wants. And so that was what I realized was really, or I felt, based on my experience and my background, could be most impactful, for today's workers.
Have you noticed any differences between millennials and Gen Zs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest difference, depending on, where in an age range, like where you fall being a millennial and a Gen Z, is, millennials still, and I'm a millennial. So we're really, there's like, we want to break the rules. We want to understand the rules and then kind of navigate within those rules.
Yeah.
And maybe we break them a little bit, but we still have the, like, this is kind of how, these are the steps of life that we should be taking, when we hit certain age marks, should we be thinking about a family or kids or promotions or houses or what have you? So it's still structured, but we're also a little bit rebellious in that structure. So when we're typically working with clients who are in the millennial state, it's, how do we think about what structure is important to you, and then helping people navigate that for themselves. Gen Z is really funny because there's like, let's just break every rule. We shouldn't have to do anything society tells us to do. So for that, it's almost like, okay, well, let's just try to make sure we have the right bullet points of what are like the 3 things that are important to you, so that they're able to kind of break the rules on their own terms and not kind of naively go through breaking rules and then kind of screwing themselves over later on.
No, yeah, I'm a millennial too. It's always about like guidelines.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, there's a cost and benefit to everything I do. There really isn't. Let's just go with the flow. I
Exactly.
haven't mastered that yet.
That's
I
exactly.
know, I know you were mentioning in your presentation like the right career for you and trying to find the right career for you. So, is there any advice or kind of what you would tell to either graduates who are just graduating right now? You go to 4-year college, you want to do that, and you're like, I'm going to major in finance, that's what I'm going to do. And then you go graduate, and then you work for a year, and you're like, I don't want to do this, and I don't know what to do. I remember being a kid, we used to take these like job tests of what you would do when you would be older, and then depending on your personality, you have a list of like 5 jobs. But is there anything like advice, like the right career path? Because you go to college, you choose a career, you choose a major, then you graduate, and then half the time you don't even work in that major or you don't even pursue that. And you're like, what did I do 4 years of school?
Yeah, a really nice analogy that I like to use, that's borrowed from many others, is that your career is going to feel more like a lattice or like one of those jungle gyms than it feel very linear. And I think the sooner people recognize that, especially young graduates, the more they can think about the holistic aspect of what a job is serving and all the different directions it can take, right? And I think that's one of the most important things. And we worked with KIPP charter schools and their alumni students. So they were just about to graduate college. And a big takeaway that one had working with their coach was, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was really daunting and scary. And by the way, it's like 67% of graduates leave not knowing what they want, their career to be. And of the 33% that do know, like oftentimes they change their mind. But removing that pressure and saying, okay, but your career is a lattice, right? This is just a stepping stone to get further to what your dream situation is. And then constantly really thinking about, okay, those musts and the like must, shoulds, and coulds, and just reevaluating it at that 6-month and 18-month increments.
Love that. And then how has being an entrepreneur been different for you from working in a corporate environment, and what has been kind of the most successful and challenging aspects of it?
Yeah, I think the most challenging aspect I realized early on was that I didn't have a manager. And I think that was a really daunting moment, thinking, I'm the decider of strategy, of how we spend money, of who our partners were. And I didn't have someone who was going to check my work or make sure that I was, meeting the goals that I wanted to meet. Granted, yes, we have a board of advisors and we have employees and things like that that will hold you accountable. But at the end of the day, there's a lot that falls on the founder, especially early. And so that was a really big aha moment where I had to start building systems of accountability and my own checks and balances because I didn't have that formal, manager-managee relationship. And the most exciting piece has just been the fact that when we see, we had one individual work with a coach, he'd been laid off during COVID, trying to change jobs even before he was laid off. He had been in, I think, 12 months of just the job search process and was feeling really frustrated because he kept coming to final round interviews and then getting passed over for someone else. And then he worked with a coach for about 3 hours, realized that it was the confidence in how he was presenting himself and telling his story that was holding him back. And within 2 months, he had 3 job offers and a $10,000 increase in salary, right? And like feeling like, oh my gosh, I helped build a system that supports this and that makes people's lives better is like just so exciting and overwhelming. And I'm so grateful for those moments. And so being an entrepreneur has been really amazing there. And Kai asked, do I ever struggle with imposter syndrome? Absolutely. All the time. A big piece too even comes in fundraising. So I don't have a background in fundraising. I don't come from extremely wealthy parents or friends who have like a ton of money to just give me to build this company. And I've had to go to, different, funds, different people, pitch the company, pitch the business. And in that, the whole time I'm like, am I even qualified to do this? Do I even believe what I'm saying? You know, am I promising the world and I'm only going to accomplish, 10% of it? And those are moments where I have to remind myself of like all of the like successes we've had as a business and the fact that, I'm doing this for others. And that's what helps me combat imposter syndrome, because if not, if it's all about me, I like will spin and spiral. And I found that people even think about that like with jobs of not realizing, am I overselling myself? Am I underselling myself? Like I only have had X number of years in this space, someone up next to me maybe has like X plus 5 years in that space, and just realizing, there's so many things you've already accomplished and you're already having those conversations. People are already considering you, has been a really big moment of realizing, you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for the organization. You're doing it to make whatever that role or team you're joining better.
Oh, glad. How do you think the job market is going to be in the future?
Yeah. So in the future, I see a world where, people have more than one job at a time, that jobs become a lot more creative and a lot more flexible, and technology being able to enable a lot of that. There's already, I think it was in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal that was saying, there's a large fraction of people right now who have 2 full-time jobs because the pandemic has allowed people to be able to hop from one type of meeting to another meeting very easily. And I don't see that going away. I see organizations just becoming more comfortable with sharing their resources with other organizations, which I'm really, really excited about. And I think the idea of that lattice is only going to get bigger, where people start really having not just 12 careers in their year, but maybe they have 20, because they're spending, different times as a creator. And then they're maybe, working in product, and then they may be a founder, and then they may go in to do some teaching. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for the future too.
So, question for you.
Yeah. How did I deal emotionally and mentally about the Vanity Matrix? So when you say that, are you thinking more around just like a me type of situation?
Hi. So I just sorry, I just asked in person. So Vanity Metric, especially with technology and innovation, you can get media attention, you can get write-ups, you can get exposure, and a lot of the times that can trip up people. And this, oh, I'm getting success, but actually what's happening, you're just getting media and you're getting attention, but it's not that you're getting more customers, you're signing up more clients, you're getting more, you're growing. So how do you differentiate yourself from that? It's almost like if you're in either media or in entertainment, when you struggle with separating yourself from your gift and start believing your own fan mail. So how do you separate yourself from actually this is my gift and this is actually who I am, etc.
Yeah. So big thing that even on that, that founders often struggle with, and even people, is that, I am more than my company, right? I am Erin, and Erin likes to do yoga and to run and to rock climb and spend time with my partner. And my job is just one aspect of who I am. So even just kind of separating those things, I've had to be really intentional about it. And I manage that tactically, like through like really proactive calendaring and saying, if I want to make sure that I don't have work take over my life, I need to make sure I'm scheduling, the coffee chats with my friends that I want, or making sure I have time to connect with people I care about. Another piece with it when it comes to just, thinking about the company and the Vanity Matrix is, I heard someone say, press releases, like that can have you can go way up and then you come way down. And, you can have a moment where you get 100 followers in that day because you did something right. But then you're going to have another set of days where you don't get any more new followers, or you don't get any attention. And I think just being aware of that early has helped me personally see, the really high moments as ones to celebrate, acknowledge, and learn from, and see low moments of just places and opportunities to continue to like learn and grow and test. And the other thing is I try to see everything personally as, you know, an experiment. So sometimes experiments go really well, sometimes experiments don't go well. And removing it from, again, like tying myself and my identity to that success has helped for me, you know, limit that. Again, you can still fall into the trap. Social media is everywhere. It's really easy to, you know, gas yourself up and think you're amazing. And I think having confidence in yourself is really important, but really trying not, I think I've ridden a high and then felt a low, you know, before that. It's like, there's no point to buy into it. It's just to see everything is like, okay, cool. This is something that worked really well. How do we duplicate it again? And think really systematically about it instead of getting emotionally attached as much as possible. And having people keep you in check about that has also been really important, you know, having a network that helps. Another question, how has gender equity impacted my industry? So there's been a lot of things. So one big thing we've seen even with clients is males are more likely to ask for help than females. So we will get more males signing up for our platform just because they are more like quote unquote, more practice in asking for help. So one big thing we've been trying to do is figuring out ways to help people, you know, sign up without feeling like they're asking for help first. It's, you know, attending different types of events and making it feel fun and having it targeted to both, you know, both genders. Another piece is within like leadership and career development, while at lower levels, it, you know, is, you know, can be very female heavy, very minority heavy. At the top levels, you still have, you know, a very classic straight white male sitting there. And I see that honestly for us as an advantage, a competitive advantage for Allspring, because there's a bit of, unless they're, you know, practicing it, they just don't get it, like those cultural idiosyncrasies and experiences that people of color, of minorities, of different socioeconomic classes are going through. So oftentimes there's a lot of like rinse and repeat programming and advice out there that doesn't actually move the needle for people. And so that's how I've been thinking a lot about it. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I love this experiments pass fail thing. Thank you so much, Julian.
Is there a difference you've seen? You know, I did my MBA as well in finance, and I've seen a lot where like men have this confidence. You know, when they go in interviews, they might not know, they might not be qualified for it, but they still go in interviews and are like, they're confident about it. And then when you see us women like, oh, well, let me like, I says 5 years, I only have 3 years, not going to apply, or, you know, let me prep for it, let me know everything, every little detail. Have you seen individuals who are reaching out to you, men and women, like a difference from that confidence level?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it has to do with the imposter syndrome. And sometimes it's not necessarily, there's this really interesting study about minorities in schools, and I can find it and send it out. It was not that it was like lack of confidence necessarily in themselves, but lack of confidence in the systems that they were actually going to like respect and acknowledge the skills, perspectives, backgrounds that they have. And I think that framing is also really helpful when we're working with clients, because it's like, no, you're really confident in who you are. It's just like, you might not feel that this company you're interviewing with is going to believe you or believe that you have all of those, you know, those requirements, et cetera. One of the big things we've seen, or one of the big things coaches help with, is helping people get really tight on how awesome they are. And that's been a really amazing thing to see, where, so the example I gave earlier, and that this was a male, granted he was like LGBT. So there's like a set of, you know, imposter syndromes there, where, you know, he had a background in data science, like had worked in consulting, like been top tier at the job before he got laid off, but was really uncomfortable talking about getting laid off. And that was the sticking point. And a piece that he worked with a coach on was, how do you just own your story and be super proud of who you are. And that's something that's been really interesting to see clients come out of. And that is one thing I think, oftentimes I think men are helped with telling that story that they're able to own. And so getting that to be kind of democratized equal playing field of us all being excited about that has been a really big piece. And then I see, how do you navigate translating corporate culture to employees and partners during social distancing and like COVID? So corporate culture has been a really big piece that we've been understanding. So when we work with companies, we do a big culture diagnostic before we start our relationship with them, so that we're recommending aspects, like we're recommending ways for someone to grow within that organization that actually align to that organization. So for example, we were talking to an asset management firm about, they're losing a lot of their young professionals. And we said, okay, well, they need it sounds like there's a bit around kind of advocating for themselves and communicating what's exciting for them and what they really want to be doing in the future. And the company was like, great, but at our company, you're not just going to go and say, hey, can I lead this big presentation because I'm really smart? It's like, no, it's like, how do you have those really kind of small micro conversations regularly with the decision makers to help you kind of navigate the firm? So we do a lot to understand the culture and how people communicate, how feedback is given, how performance reviews and evaluations happen. For an individual, we do a similar thing where coaches spend a lot of time just understanding what's the culture you're in today and what culture do you want to move to, and asking a lot of similar types of questions. And we really have noticed, with the distance working, the biggest change is just how we all meet and engage. What advice would I give to a 21-year-old me? Literally everything. One is this big, careers aren't linear. Another piece is that you need to think about your personal, professional, and financial goals as a whole. I went into the workforce just thinking like, this is my job. I am 100% my job, and I'm just going to be good at this job. And that means I'm good at being a person. And not realizing that I need to be thinking about what matters to me in my relationships and how do I want to think about saving? How do I want to think about student loans? Instead of just thinking about like that piece. Another one is just like slowing down and connecting with people intentionally to learn more and gain awareness of what other opportunities might exist. A big thing coming out of school, especially majoring in business and focusing on I only knew really about consulting and finance careers. There's an opportunity of like spending time to just understand what other people do and understand the nuances of it, that, could have set me up for building this company 3 years earlier or something. Oh, very cool. It's ACE tutor. Do you have a question about like just background and things like that, Julian? Okay, that's totally fine.
Erin, I know we're getting close to time. What is kind of one of the biggest things you've seen in the job market, in the sense that, everything being remote and that benefits package of, either it's the pay or the remote lifestyle, or people holding more than one job? What kind of shifts have you seen that people are asking for in their next, if they are changing careers, what are they looking for? Kind of the big things that you've seen.
Yeah, a big thing is actually evaluating this idea of like cost of living and cost of living adjustments that companies are making now, that they're saying. So for example, Facebook said, yeah, you can live anywhere. But if you move away from San Francisco or New York, we're going to completely adjust your salary to cost of living standards. And actually people are starting to do the math and say that's not fair. And they're looking at companies, I think like Spotify says, we're going to pay you the same amount no matter where you live. And that's becoming a really big benefit that people are seeing and valuing. Another is what are the wellness benefits that companies have that can help support, that full person. So like Pinterest has an organization they work with where they, literally if you are a new mother, you can get a night nurse, you can get like different types of transportation support, you can get different, wellness room support, and thinking about that whole person and benefits that share for the whole person. Those have been two really big transitions I've seen, because companies are realizing that forcing people to live in one specific place just isn't going to work anymore.
The remote life has been growing.
Yes. Oh, a ton. Remote life is, I think remote life is growing a lot, but I do think we're going to start seeing companies shift to this idea of like a hybrid environment where you're in the office sometimes and out of the office other times, but no one's determined what hybrid, quote unquote, really means. And if it's going to be hybrid or if it's really going to be flexible. There's some people who are saying, hey, I'm totally fine going to the office for the first half of the year, and then I want to be remote somewhere completely different for the second half of the year. So I think it's really not just about remote, but it's really about like that flexibility of being able to kind of own where you spend your time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kai.
You go ahead.
No, you go. Open the floor to you.
Okay. What advice can you give me, Erin? So I run a company. I'm in another city at the moment. I'm kind of on vacation, sort of, but not really because I'm still working. But I'm in Johannesburg and my company is in Durban, and I have a team of about 11 employees. And I find that it's almost like at one stage there was a little bit of an company politics that was going on, and I had to put out the fire. I managed to put out the fire, but sometimes I hear things like people like, there's things that are happening without my knowledge, and there's little camps that are factions growing. And I found it incredibly difficult. I've been away now for a month and a half, almost 2 months, just to de-stress and just get away from everything. But I found it very difficult to have these like online meetings, and either the internet isn't working as perfect as it should, or somebody is not there at that particular time because they're going to send a client. And there's all these challenges. So how do you what advice would you give for someone like that? And how are other companies dealing with these kinds of things? Because it's quite a beautiful thing. I think what I was talking about, like, work remotely, parked in, work at the office. I think it's lovely to do that. Like I wish we'd always have done that in life, because some of us are just not meant to be at the office all the time. And I'm one of those people. But I do want to go from time to time. But like if I'm away for 6 months, say for instance, living in another country, like how can because I plan to actually do that. I plan to like live away, like maybe let's say half a year. But I want to find a way that's going to work for me where I don't have to feel like I need to police people, what advice can you give me in that sense? Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So there's as you asked that question, there's a few things that came to mind. So one is, what kind of cultural norms have you established with your organization, norms and expectations of how do you meet? What are the expectations around meeting? So you meant like a specific thing you mentioned is like you want to have a call, but someone might be also doing a client meeting. Do you have times that are blocked off that the expectation is everyone is supposed to be on this call or in this meeting on this day? And that's, one of the cultural norms and expectations of the company. Another is I've seen a lot of people will build like one-pagers around how do I like to work? So when do I like to have meetings? How do I like to be contacted? How do I like requests shared with me? So I think one of the big things as we move into a remote environment is we have to actually be really clear with each other on what the new rules of communication are. So the other piece I would say is, if you want to do 6 months on and 6 months, not off, but, somewhere else, do you have different expectations for what that 6 months on looks like versus 6 months off? And just being really clear and upfront about that. And the more buy-in you can get as an organization, the better. I recommend whoever kind of leadership is, set those norms and then socialize them, get feedback, and then have full org buy-in on that. Also simplifying systems of communication, whether that's GChat or Slack or email, and just being really clear, or it's managing through Asana, but being really clear and consistent around that ends up helping a lot as well.
Thank you. Can I just squeeze one more quick one before you go? I know time is against us. Something just came up recently which shocked me, because I think of myself as a very accommodating guy. You know, like I don't have like a corner office and that kind of thing. You know, we all work together. I don't even allow people to call me boss, whatever. But something shocked me the other day. I found out that some employees are afraid of me. They're afraid to speak to me about things. And so they start chit-chatting amongst themselves, and then the information never gets to me. So somebody's happy, but they're not telling me, because in their minds, I'm the boss, but I'm not the boss. But I tell them I'm not the boss, but they don't want to listen to that. They still like don't tell me things. So how can I communicate to people that please communicate, like, you know, openly and not be afraid? I don't know how to do that, because I put that out there, but people don't seem to respond. And I'm not a miracle worker, so I don't know how to, like, you know what I mean? How do you deal with things like that? Like,
Yeah. I think the first thing is to realize that you are the boss. Like, that's just a fact, right? You're the boss, you're the leader. You are the one who owns hiring and in a lot of ways. You own hiring and you own firing decisions. You own the business strategy, right? There's so many things that do come to you. So, you know, I think there's a difference between saying, you know, I really want to be approachable and I don't want people to think I'm their boss, because at the end of the day, if you want these other cultural norms kind of respected and established, you should be seen as the boss and you should be seen as the person who's demonstrating those things. When we're thinking about being approachable, I think a big piece is thinking about different people are comfortable sharing information and feedback in different ways. So, you know, it sounds like you're a person who's really open to that kind of like real-time, collaborative, in-person feedback that can be really helpful to make, you know, some quick decisions. But sometimes other people don't feel as comfortable with that. So I would consider establishing other channels for people to share feedback, whether it's anonymously or in writing, so that that might give them the comfortability to share things that they might not feel comfortable going to you with originally. And the other thing you can start doing is, if you start setting up more, like, I'm not sure what kind of event moments or meeting moments you have with your company now, but if there's more times for collaboration or, you know, that psychological safety, or ways to elevate it, can be really helpful.
thank you, that was helpful.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Erin. And I know we are right on time. So thank you for your great information and this great video session. I really hope that everyone enjoyed as much as I did. And we'll be posting this on our YouTube, so make sure to subscribe later. Please sign up and to our website to stay up to date on next upcoming video sessions. We're going to have 2 in November, and even funding opportunities. We have launched our social innovation competition today. So if anyone is interested in joining and signing up for our social innovation competition, please sign up on our website, share with your networks and your contacts, and hopefully more entrepreneurs will apply so they can get seed money for their organization and startup. So Erin, thank you so much, and we really appreciate you taking your time and speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it and enjoyed the time.
Thank you.